As the 18th century drew to a close, France's costly involvement in the American Revolution and large spending by King Louis VI had left the country close to bankruptcy. Not only were the royal coffers depleted, but 2 decades of poor cereal harvest, drought, cattle disease, and high bread prices had caused unrest among peasants and the urban poor. Many expressed their desperation through rioting, looting, and striking. Now, did you know over 17,000 people were officially tried and executed during the Reign of Terror? An unknown number of others died in prison without trial. Now, the Reign of Terror was a 10-month period in which suspected enemies of the revolution were guillotined by the thousands. Many of the killings were carried out under the orders from Robespierre, who dominated the Committee of Public Safety until his own execution on July 28, 1794. Charles Alexander de Calonne proposed a financial reform package that included a universal land tax from which the privileged classes would no longer be exempt. To gain support for these measures and stall a growing aristocratic revolt, the king summoned the Estates General, an assembly representing France's clergy, nobility, and middle class for the first time since 1614. Now, on June 17, with talks over procedures stalled, the Third Estate met alone and adopted the title of National Assembly. 3 days later, they met in a nearby indoor tennis court and took the tennis court oath, vowing not to disperse until constitutional reform had been achieved. Within a week, 47 liberal nobles had joined them, and many of the clerical deputies, and on June 27, Louis VI absorbed all 3 orders into the new assembly. On July 14, rioters stormed the Bastille fortress in an attempt to secure gunpowder and weapons, and many consider this event now as a national holiday and as the start of the French Revolution. The wave of revolution quickly spread through the countryside and into the city. Revolting against years of exploitation, peasants looted and burned the homes of tax collectors, landlords, and the elite. Known as the Great Fear, the agrarian insurrection inspired the National Constitution Assembly to abolish feudalism on August 4, 1789, signing what the historian Georges Lefebvre later called the death certificate of the old order. On August 4, the Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a statement of Enlightenment thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and this document proclaimed the Assembly's commitment to replace the Ancien regime with a system based on equal opportunity, freedom of speech, popular sovereignty, and representative government. Adopted on September 3, 1791, France's first written constitution echoed the more moderate voices in the Assembly, establishing a constitutional monarchy in which the king enjoyed royal veto power and the ability to appoint ministers. This compromise did not sit well with influential radicals like Maximilien de Robespierre, Camille Desmoulins, and Georges Danton, who began causing and looking for popular support for a more republican form of government and the trial of Louis VI. In April 1792, the newly elected Legislative Assembly declared war on Russia, on Austria, and Prussia, where it believed that French emigres were building counter-revolutionary alliances. It also hoped to spread its revolutionary ideals across Europe through warfare. The following month, after August 10, 1792, a wave of violence in which Parisian insurrectionists massacred hundreds of accused counter-revolutionaries, and the Legislative Assembly was replaced by the National Convention, which proclaimed the abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of the French Republic. On January 21, 1793, they sent King Louis VI and condemned him to death for his high treason and crimes against the state, to the guillotine. His wife Marie Antoinette suffered the same fate 9 months later. On August 22, 1795, the National Convention, mostly Girondins who had survived the Reign of Terror, approved a new constitution that created France's first legislature. Executive power would lie in the hands of a 5-member directory appointed by Parliament. Royalists and Jacobins protested the new regime, but were silenced by the army, now led by a young and successful general named Napoleon Bonaparte. The Directory's 4 years in power were troubled with financial crisis, popular discontent, inefficiency, and above all, political corruption. By the late 1790s, the Directors relied almost entirely on the military to maintain their authority and had given up much of their power to the generals in the field. On November 9, 1799, as frustration with their leadership reached a limit, Bonaparte staged a coup d'etat, abolishing the Directory and appointing himself France's first consul. The event marked the end of the French Revolution and the beginning of the Napoleonic era, in which France would come to dominate much of continental Europe.